Welcome to Simplyrobotix, the podcast exploring the animation industry one episode at a time. I'm your host, Monique, and you can find me on all social media platforms at Simplyrobotix. That is Simplyrobotix. And remember, when listening to the show, use the hashtag Simplyrobotixpod. That way you could join in the conversation and I could find what you're saying and, just reshare it on social media, what have you. So as you can see by the title of this episode, this week I'm going to be talking about Elizabeth Ido's animated series that's currently streaming on Netflix called City of Ghosts. Now, I remember seeing articles about this maybe 1 to 2 years ago, so I'm just happy that it's out. I feel like I did have kind of one perception of it, which was very faint. I didn't really remember what it was about. So, I watch the trailer? I think I just jumped into the show. I didn't even watch the trailer. And you know what? Let me just continue. As always, I have the links to a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about in this episode in the show notes, meaning the link to the trailer and links to the articles that I'm going to be referring. As I said, this is currently streaming on Netflix, and it premiered in March of this year, 2021, depending on what year you're listening to this show, because, whatever. The description, as found on Wiki, says that a group of kids in this hybrid animated mockumentary series discovers stories around the Los Angeles area by directly communicating with the ghosts that inhabit the city. The series was announced, I told you, a couple years ago in 2019, and Elizabeth Ido worked on Adventure Time as a showrunner. So if you enjoyed Adventure Time and the many spin-offs, but stuff that was also inspired or created by people who worked on Adventure Time, Rebecca Sugar. I feel like you might enjoy the show too. I will say that this show, I'm going to get into it too, but it's definitely for a younger age demographic. But yeah, I'm just going to save that because I'm going to save that. Let's just talk about, it's about 6 episodes. So I just want to talk about kind of each episode individually. So I guess it's like partial spoilers because I don't think anything that I'm saying is going to really take away from your viewing experience. But if you want to stop here and say, no, I'm actually going to check out this show after watching the trailer and then come back and listen to this episode, I think now is a good time to make that decision. Okay, so let's say you're just like, no, I just want to hear what you have to say, Monique. And after I hear it, I'll decide if I watch this or not. Fine, cool, let's keep it moving. The first episode is titled The Sort of Japanese Restaurant. And the description is, in Boyle Heights, a restaurant has a phantom come during the night, annoying the shop's owner. The ghost club comes to this scene to find out what's really going on. So I don't really have too much to say about this episode. I think it's a great introductory to the show, to the characters, and to the style that the show is. Yeah, to the style of the show, the way that they're telling their stories. I immediately fell in love platonically, like an adorable way, falling in love, right? With the main character, I would say Zelda. She's so freaking adorable. I just love the voice. I love the character design. And, I'm just like, oh, you're so cute. Second episode is titled Venice. The description is, in Venice Beach, the Ghost Club investigates the disappearance of a skater kid and talks with 2 spirits who are former skaters. Now, the skater kid, she doesn't feel comfortable anymore skating in front of new people, like in the skate park. And I recently started roller skating about a month and a half, almost 2 months ago. And I completely relate to that. Even though I don't live by skater parks, I do skate outside. And so I definitely get a little bit self-conscious skating and practicing in front of people. In this episode, there's a character named Thomas, and they are a part of the Ghost Club. Now, as they are introducing themselves, they say, my pronouns are they, them. My name is Thomas. My pronouns are they, them. And I just was like, wait, hold up. That's really amazing. One, the characters in the show are so young, clearly. And the intended audience is also so young. So to have so early on in the show for a child character to be like, they, them, clearly non-binary was like really impactful for me and moving. And I didn't go back to see if in the first episode those were the pronouns that they were used. And I didn't pay attention, unfortunately, to the rest of the episodes to see how the other characters address Thomas. Like, I know for sure that they use the appropriate pronouns, but I just am so used to hearing it to a certain extent that it probably was just like, what stood out to me was just the fact that they articulated that this is my pronouns, whatever. Moving on. The third episode is about Lemire Park, and the Ghost Club is called to investigate after this like cafe owner experiences drumming, which continues throughout the night, and it drives like all the neighbors of the cafe crazy. And I really like this episode because it was focused on Black people. So one of the members of the Ghost Club is a Black girl. What is her name? I think her name is Ava. She's adorable. All the characters are adorable. Okay, first off, they are insanely adorable. So she's like the lead in investigating this and telling the story. So Lemire Park is a park that is located in mainly like a Black neighborhood, and this story just talks about the gentrification of the neighborhood and how they repurposed the park so that a lot of the outdoor performers who were Black musicians that used to play their instruments and stuff at the park didn't have anywhere to go. So essentially, like, this ghost is one of those musicians, and he's kind of just causing a ruckus, right? Cool. The next one, again, forgive me my pronunciation on this. The episode is called Tavangar. And the description says Jasper contacts the Ghost Club and they help him connect with his long lost ancestors. So this episode is more specifically about the indigenous people that lived in what now became LA before, I believe, the Spanish colonization. Now, history is not my strong suit, never has been. It may never be. So if it wasn't the Spanish, I feel like in my reading, that's what they said, but I could be wrong. Jasper shares also early on in the episode that he has two moms, which told him that he was or is a part of this indigenous people, the Tavangar people. And I thought, like, 2 episodes back, Thomas is like they, them. Now Jasper's like, I have two moms. And I was like, wow, this show is touching on so many different like identities, right? We're starting a little bit of family dynamics and the stories of all these different parts of LA. And I'm just like, wow, and everything is mentioned just super casually. Like, I am the adult bumping on it a little bit. I'm not like stopped. I'm just like, oh, snap. But I'm sure kids are watching this just like, oh, cool, whatever. Like, keep it moving. So another thing that I thought was pretty cool about this episode is that the ghosts are referred to as spirits, but then also they explain the concept of ancestors. And I thought that was really interesting, and I thought that they explained it in a way that's really attainable and digestible for children, because they didn't complicate it, but they didn't make it too dumb. But it's like, okay, I understand what an ancestor is now. Maybe I have ancestors, you have ancestors, all that sort of stuff. The 5th episode, I don't really have too much to say. It was called Bob and Nancy. And the description says, assisting a marionette theater, the Ghost Club is able to stop a daughter and her mother ghost from fighting each other. But what also ends up happening, there's actually 2 ghosts in the story, and they kind of serve different storytelling purposes. But from my reading, it was more so about focusing on this venue. So they used 2 different characters to help shed light on this venue that's like a staple for this community. So one of the ghosts in this episode was like based on a real actual Japanese punk star from the 70s. And I thought that was actually pretty dope. The last episode, which I feel like was a really good closer, like the pacing of the show I found to be really good overall. I watched them back to back, and the last episode is titled Koreatown, and it says a music teacher comes to the Ghost Club asking for help finding her missing friend, which is a ghost. And in this episode, she is of similar like an indigenous Mexican culture, and so her ghost or her spirits look drastically different than all the ghosts and spirits that we've been seeing because of the way that this indigenous visually depicts ghosts. And I found that to be very interesting. And again, like, just overall, like, amazed by what they're doing. So to get into a little bit about the visual style, the show's characters are finely designed 3D cartoons, but the backdrops and the settings aren't, and that's from Wired. The show's backgrounds come from photographs taken by Kwasi Boyd Boulden. So I'm horrible with names. I'm really apologize. Then they're painted over at this Los Angeles studio called Chromosphere, and the character animation was done by a French company called Team TO. So Ido explained that one of the constraints with working with CG, like basically regular CG characters, is that the budgets can limit how many models can be built, which may lead to more similar looking characters in the background. Like if you think about some CG feature movies that you've seen, the background characters, like in crowds and stuff like that, they kind of really do look like copy and paste, and then they just add a little bit of different like saturation and hues and shades and what have you. But she wanted to make sure that the background characters were representative of how diverse LA was, so they were able to do this by doing 2D animation for the background characters, which again then brought down the cost, made it more attainable, and they were able to have more variety. And that was mentioned in the LA Times. What I also found to be pretty interesting was that most of the voices on the show are actual real people. They're not actors. These are real people telling real stories about their lives. And the punk icon, for example, is Atomic Nancy. She's very real and not a ghost, and that I found on Wired.com. Lastly, Ido did this interview with Vulture.com, and forgive me, those of you who are watching, I'm going to read this because I found this to be very impactful for me. So the question was, why did you believe making the show feel like a documentary series was the ideal approach? And she responded, since I did it for my short film with my brother, I always wanted to do this in a documentary style as well. I really value the nuance in people's actual voices and in talking to them and hearing people. Those are the things that I enjoy. I enjoy a lot of documentaries because they show an unsheltered version of people. There is certain comedy and just storytelling things like learned authenticity in that. Once you start to script that for people, that kind of originality starts to disappear. So I was really eager to make sure that as many characters as we could would be voiced by people that were just talking as themselves. I worked with a documentary producer named Joanne Shen, who helped get me started on how documentaries work. I also got together with my writer-comedian friend Jenny Yang, and we made a grid of all the neighborhoods that we would conceivably talk about. Again, that's from Vulture.com. Now, if you don't know, I'm telling you, but you might know, I too am making an animated short, and it's a mockumentary, and I know some people find that phrase to be a bit offensive, which I learned especially through reading some of her interviews. I don't personally, for me, find it offensive. A mockumentary is making something in the style of a documentary that's not really a documentary. However, I understand why it can be like offensive, or not offensive, but not accurate, because an animated documentary is still a documentary, but you're calling it a mockumentary because it's not live action. Like, you're not visually seeing the people that's telling the stories. So it's an animated documentary, her short film and the show, and the film that I'm making is also an animated documentary. So hearing her say this about like the authenticity of using real people for the voices of the characters and not professional voice actors, like even professional children voice actors, I found to be really dope, because I'm going to be using real people too. I'm not like, scripting all that sort of stuff. The next thing is an interview that I found on Cartoon Brew, which was actually with the people, a part of Team TO, which is that French animation studio. And the question that they asked is, the animation is more restrained than in many kids shows. What kinds of rules did you set up with Elizabeth Ido about how the human characters could move? Mariah Luna, who is or was the animation supervisor on City of Ghosts, says, it was not easy in the beginning. We wanted to make the characters super active, moving around, using their hands all the time. But after talking to Elizabeth and Louis, Grain, the supervising director, we understood the characters didn't need that. And this is where it's going to lead me to my final thoughts, right? It's not like SpongeBob. You know, if you think about SpongeBob and Animaniacs, it's not that kind of animated show for children. It is like a calmer, like tranquil, super educational in a way that's not boring type of show. And I think that's really because of the voice actors or the voices that they used to tell these stories. It made it really engaging and you wanted to know more about these communities and these people. It's very visually appealing, which has to do with the backgrounds, you know, being photographs that's painted after the background characters moving. They're 2D. The main characters are 3D, but they have like a 2D style applied to them. I really appreciate that these episodes weren't long feeling and weren't boring. I'm really impressed with how much information they packed into each episode because it wasn't overwhelming and it wasn't like a snooze fest. And I also really loved like the handy cam approach to this because it, to my understanding, Zelda's brother is the camera guy and she talks to him and he talks back, and in a way it kind of gives you like that Office feel for those who've watched Office or any shows like that. And I just really like if you think of a show like Total Drama Island, if you're not familiar with that, Total Drama Island is a show that basically pokes fun at shows like The Survivor. It's an animated elimination competition show. And what I'm going to say, what I was getting at with that, I was like, why am I talking about this? It's like, I really like when animated contents kind of play up those type of genres and stuff like that. Like, you know, clearly this is, to a certain extent, it's not live. It's not actual humans or whatever, but you're really sold because of the commitment to the genre of whatever it is that the animation is squeezing itself into. So, really short episode. I really love City of Ghost. I would recommend it to anyone who has children. I think it's TVY 7, and it does feel like it's for even younger than 7, but I would say like 10 and younger for sure. Just pick, like you heard me talk about each episode. You can read the descriptions, watch the trailer for yourself. But if you have like a child in your life, I think pick an episode randomly and show it to them. And, you know, I would hope that they wouldn't be so turned off and bored with it because I don't know. I was seeing some weird stuff on social media, but I didn't tune into it really. Like, was there backlash or something that she or they, I don't even know their pronouns, was receiving for the show? Because I've been seeing so much positivity about it, but is it that like they might not get a second season or something? Like, I don't know, but I'm really happy it exists. One day I hope that I will still be able to have access to it so like I can show it to future kids or future friends' kids or what have you. It's really, really good. So I can say that the next episode would be, is it called The Mitchells and the Machine? Whatever Sony just did. It's not whatever, but what Sony just did, that's now on Netflix too. I'm going to watch that like very, very soon. That'll be my next episode. And if you are subscribed to my Patreon, or if you are a Patreon, a patron on Patreon, whatever have you, I do have basically like here's the tech that I have for making my film, and I'm gonna go over exactly what it says and talk about why I purchased some of the things I purchased and what my intentions are for that. And you can look out for that this month too, because I guess I'm gonna ramble a little bit, right? I had to go out of town for 2 weeks last month to visit my grandma, and I had stuff ready that I just needed to edit and release, but like it was just impossible. Like I was still working from my family's house down there, so that went out the window. So now I kind of feel like in part I'm a little bit in like overdrive because I feel like I have to make up, but I don't have to burn myself out. I don't need to do the most, but I'm really looking forward to getting stuff out and moving forward with like the puppet that I was making, the armature. I need to finish that, and I need to move forward and actually animate the stuff and see, you know, if everything that I'm thinking of in my head is going to be actually attainable. Like, am I actually going to be able to do it? So I'm looking forward to starting to do animation tests, but I'm not finished making the puppet first. So, you know, baby steps. I have the summer to do this. My goal is that by the end of the summer, I would have like a 10-second snippet prototype of what I actually want the film to be So since I told y'all, I gotta commit to it, because now y'all know. Now y'all know. So anyways, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for, it's been a couple weeks, but I'm happy that you're back. I'm happy that I'm back. Remember, you can follow me on all social media, Simply Robotics. Website is simplyrobotics.com. And what am I thinking? Hashtag Simplyrobotixpod. So until next time, bye.